In everyone's life at some time, our inner fire goes out. It is then burst into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should all be thankful for those people who rekindle the inner spirit. The true graduation duel. What in the world is the true graduation duel? Although it's rather obvious on a surface level point of view, it's essentially synonymous for rite of passage, in which Jaden Yuki is graduating and or transitioning into adulthood. Basically, Jaden is growing up. But I can't help but feel like there's always a slight misconception in that regard. In addition, I think there's a little more life to it than just that. So I'd like to break down a few tidbits and dive into this a tad bit further. Jaden Yuki has always been a fun, loving, and charismatic guy. Although the first couple duels in the series make him seem like he's absolutely flawless, realistically, he's anything but that. Jaden is practically your typical Duel Monsters fanatic who loves Duel Monsters just as much as you and I do. So naturally he's pretty good at the game. Jaden Yuki is a pretty humble guy, and it shows because he respects top duelists such as Zane and especially his idol, Yugioh. Now, although it's never truly clear as to what Jaden's motivation and goals are other than having fun, the English dub title of the first episode title reads as The Next King of Games, while the Japanese dub reads as The One Who Inherits the Game, which is actually kind of funny now that I think about it, because, you know, the next generation, or GX in this case, typically will inherit some kind of title from a predecessor and become the successor, which obviously this is referring to Jaden Yuki. But all of that just kind of falls apart, and then you realize that Jaden's goal was so simple, in which he just wants to have fun and nothing more. The title of King of Games would be nice, but a lot of things would be nice to have as well. And yet, that's not going to stop him from having fun. What I love about Jaden is that you can really see him develop throughout the seasons. Because naturally for us humans, there's these stages of growth, in which there is dependence, where we have to depend on people because we might be incapable or in the process of learning. Then there's also independence. Jaden falls under this category because it's clear that his friends and acquaintances are more prone to be dependent on him, while Jaden is usually capable enough to win his own battles. But there's also something a little less known called interdependence, which entails that you are at a stage in which you recognize and accept that you can't do everything alone, and that it's okay to seek for help from others. Doing so does not make you weak. It's a matter of being able to do things on your own, while trusting that others can prove to be a means of support. The final season highlights this very nicely, as just as Jaden is about to engage in one of the final duels, he agrees to entrust his good friend Jesse to help him take down the enemy. Now, I can't help but feel like there's always a slight misconception about growing up, or at least people may use the term wrong or as an insult. Because of course, growing up doesn't mean that you suddenly are no longer allowed to partake and have fun with your favorite trading card game. No, it's in the phrase itself. Growing up is literally to grow as an individual, in both a physical and mental manner. Jaden once used to believe that he can accomplish everything on his own, but doing so caused backlash from his friends towards him. Jaden succumbed to some untapped negative emotions and recognized just how mean and brutal he can be. Though it's okay, because as long as he's being mean and brutal, to the bad guys of course. What Jaden doesn't understand initially, but eventually comes to learn, is that all emotions are good emotions. It's okay to have them. I mean, for example, as silly as it might sound, what if you never felt angry? Well, if you never felt angry, then how would you know when to stand up for your friend, or even yourself? Or what if you never felt guilt? Then how would you know when you crossed some of your friends' boundaries and might be causing more harm than good? Every emotion has a purpose. It's important to recognize and experience them in order to be able to empathize with others. My favorite episode is definitely the final stand between Jaden and Yugi, because although Jaden plays a lot of hero cards, at the end of the day, his favorite hero will always be Yugioh. And Flame Wingman, of course. Yeah, What's funny about this is that unfortunately we don't get to see an older version of Yugimoto face off against Jaden, but instead we get the Yugimoto we've all come to know and love. Many people might speculate that this is because it's peak Yugimoto in his prime, albeit that does make sense. I think rather it's supposed to emphasize that idea of transitioning into adulthood. Jaden, who has now seemingly become an adult, is facing off against a young version of Yugimoto. I feel like this ties to the idea that when we grow up, we forget things about ourselves, or we sometimes even see ourselves in other people. It's possible to learn and remember these traits we used to have, like not caring. Just to put it simply, some kid won't care if they look silly playing Pokemon cards to some adult. They just care about having fun. Though at some point in our lives, things change. We become more self-conscious about ourselves and begin to care about what others think. Of course, that shouldn't be the case, because the only opinion that should matter is yours, and whoever else you think deserves to have an opinion that matters to you. Life can be scary. It's not easy, and it doesn't get easier. There are tough times and hard climbs, but it's important to take them on together. Because despite what you may think, there's definitely people out there that care about you, or are willing to at least hear you out. Part of growing up means understanding that the world doesn't revolve around you, as well as realizing how much you actually don't know. Jaden not saying goodbye to his friends was pretty sad, but I think it came from a good place, because saying goodbye is always tough. It can hurt. And I think Jaden understands that, which is why he decides not to avoid ruining the mood, or seeing his friends feel bad. But honestly, not saying goodbye hurts a lot more if you think about it, which is why it's pretty cool and neat to see Jaden receive the letter at the end, showing just how much love these guys have for each other. At the end of the day, in order to be in a state of happiness, it's important to do the things you love. For Jaden, Duel Monsters is something he loves and enjoys. In the end, he finally regains his love and joy for the game. Still, the ending does feel a tad bit sad, because Jaden technically never does become the king of games, but does that really matter? The fact of the matter is, no, it doesn't stop him from having fun. It's funny because this kind of resonates with me, and I'm sure it does for a lot of people. For example, at some point I remember I used to want to become the best gamer, right? But eventually I realized that there's so many other people who are leagues ahead of me, and I'd never be able to make an actual career out of it. So of course it kind of bummed me out, and I felt like, well, if I'm not doing anything with this, then what's the point? But then I realized that shouldn't stop me from having fun, because it used to bring a lot of joy and happiness to me, because I'd be able to play and relate to other human beings. So essentially, I think Jaden reevaluated what his true goals are, and ultimately, it came down to helping people. It feels as though he has some natural talent and ability to do so, and so that's kind of what happened. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can't go wrong with wanting to help other people. That's kind of what a hero does, am I right?